Hello, boys and girls. I'm Andra Annette, and welcome to Storytime with Andra. So, today we are going to read a story that I really like, mostly because I wrote it. It's called The Trust Tree. But I love writing stories. When I was young, I loved to read and get lost in the stories. So, I love reading to others, and I hope that you can find something in this story that you really love too. I think that stories are a great way to get our little imaginations going. And this helps me in my life because it helps with my imagination as well. It helps me remain young at heart always. So, the name of this story is The Trust Tree, and it's a story about trust and friendship and honesty. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen because I saw that I found a way where you can actually see the story and the characters. So we have to pull this down a little bit more because, so here is the tree. Okay, this is chapter one, and this is our trust tree. But I do have to move this above the image a little bit because I see that part of the story is a little on the bottom. Okay. Okay, so this is the magical forest where the trust tree lives, and this is where our story begins today. So deep in the heart of an enchanted forest where sunlight danced on dewdrops and the air was alive with the gentle hum of nature, there stood a tree like no other. It was known as the trust tree. It towered above the forest canopy. Its shimmering leaves glistened like emeralds, and its ancient trunk etched with golden patterns that seemed to shift and sparkle with an inner light. The air around it seemed warmer, softer, as if the tree itself were cradling the forest in its glow. Animals of all kinds came to its roots to share their secrets, seek advice, and find comfort. A little fox once came with tears in her eyes, her tail dragging in the dirt, but left with a wag in her step and a spark of hope. Stories whispered that the trust tree could hear the truth in every voice and offered wisdom that always guided its visitors to a better path. Some animals said its glow came from the stars. Others believed it carried the wisdom of the entire forest. But they all agreed the trust tree was a place of honesty, courage, and safety. In this magical forest lived a small squirrel. His name was Nibble. Nibble was an adventurous little creature with fur as soft as autumn leaves and a twitching tail that always seemed to hint at his next playful idea. He loved racing through the treetops, finding shiny treasures, and playing tricks on his friends. But Nibble had a little secret of his own. He sometimes told fibs. Yes, fibs, boys and girls. Not big, harmful lies, but small ones to keep himself out of trouble. I didn't eat the last berry, he would say with wide, innocent eyes, even if his whiskers were still stained with juice. The wind knocked over your pile of acorns, not me, he would insist, even though his paw prints were everywhere. Nibble loved his carefree life, but deep down he felt a tiny twinge of guilt every time he bent the truth a little. Nibble lived high in the canopy in a cozy nest of twigs, moss, and feathers. From his treetop home, he could see the entire forest, including the glowing trust tree. Sometimes, when the wind carried the tree gentle rustle his way, it felt as if the trust tree was calling to him. He often watched as other animals visited it, their faces filled with worry, but leaving with smiles of relief. Nibble was curious about the tree, but he had never gone himself. Why would he? He had not had any big problems, and he did not like the idea of admitting his mistakes. See, there's my little guy, Nibble. One sunny morning, something happened that changed everything for Nibble. Nibble's mischievous ways led him into a situation he could not easily escape. With his heart thumping and his tail twitching, he found himself making a choice that would send him scurrying to the trust tree for help. What he would learn there would change not only his life, but the entire forest. Morning sunlight spilled through the forest canopy, dappling the ground in patches of gold. For Nibble, it was the perfect day to explore. His favorite place was the treetops, where the world stretched out before him like a green ocean. Nibble darted along a branch, his small paws moving so fast it looked like he was gliding. I wonder what treasures I'll find today, he said to himself, his voice bright with excitement. He loved collecting things, shiny pebbles, feathers, even acorn caps with unique markings. His nest was full of his discoveries, each one a reminder of a grand adventure. What kind of treasure would you collect if you were exploring the forest? See him scouting over the treetops? But Nibble was not just a collector. He was also the forest's best trickster. He hid behind bushes to startle rabbits, tied vines into playful knots, and once swapped out Chipper's stash of acorns with pine cones. It was all in good fun, of course. Nibble never meant to hurt anyone's feelings. Have you ever played a trick on someone? How did it turn out? Tag, you're it, shouted Willow, a young rabbit, as she bounced out from behind a bush. Nibble's eyes lit up. You'll never catch me, he yelled, leaping into action. The two friends raced through the forest trees, their laughter echoing in the trees. See, there they go. When the game ended, Nibble flopped onto a bed of moss, his chest heaving. You're getting faster, he said, grinning at Willow. And you're as sneaky as ever, she replied with a playful wink. But as Nibble caught his breath, a familiar thought crept into his mind. He loved being the center of attention, but sometimes his tricks went too far. Like the time he blamed the wind for topping Chipper's acorn pile when it was really his doing, or when he borrowed a shiny pebble from Willow without asking. They were little things, sure, but they always left the knot of guilt in his stomach. He shook the thought away. No time for worries, he said to himself. There's too much fun to be had. This chapter is called The Dilemma. Chapter 2. One sunny morning, Nibble was darting through the trees as usual, skipping past mushrooms and leaping over streams. His nose twitched as he spotted a stash of golden acorns, tucked snugly beneath the bush. They belonged to Chipper the chipmunk, who always worked hard gathering the best acorns. Nibble's eyes gleamed. Just one, he whispered to himself. Chipper will not even notice. But as he reached for an acorn, his paw slipped, and the whole pile tumbled into the brook. Nibble froze, watching the acorns drift away with the current. Can you see them all going down the stream? His heart raced. What would Chipper say if he found out? What if the whole forest found out? The thought made his tail twitch nervously. What have I done? He murmured, his ears flattening. He paced by the brook, staring helplessly at the ripples where the acorns had disappeared. The water shimmered under the sun, but all Nibble could see was trouble. Panic set in. He heard the rustle of leaves. Chipper was coming. Nibble glanced all around and quickly kicked some dirt over the empty spot where the stash had been. When Chipper arrived, Nibble blurted out, I saw a blue jay stealing your acorns. It flew off that way. Chipper's whiskers drooped and his eyes welled up. as he stared at the empty spot. Oh no, all my hard work, he whispered, his voice trembling. I spent days gathering those. He scurried off, his bushy tail dragging behind him, leaving Nibble alone by the brook. See how sad he is? At first, Nibble felt relief. He had avoided getting in trouble, but as the minutes passed, the guilt gnawed at him like a stubborn nut. He sat by the brook, staring at the night sky, at the water, sorry. The gentle sound of the current only made him feel worse. Why did I have to lie? He muttered to himself, his tail drooping. See him there, sitting by the brook, all sad and lost. The image of Chipper's sad face would not leave his mind. Nibble's chest felt heavy, and his nest, usually so cozy, did not feel like a refugee anymore. He tossed and turned that night, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chipper's drooping whiskers and heard his sad voice. Your turn. Okay, let's ask some questions. How do you think Chipper felt when he saw his empty stash? Do you think he was sad or disappointed? How would you have felt if that happened to you? What would you do if you accidentally ruined something that belonged to a friend? Would you tell your friend? Have you ever felt guilty after telling a lie? What did you do? Draw how Nibble might look as if he sits by the brook thinking about what he has done. Okay, so that's your assignment. Get your little coloring pad out and let's draw Nibble. Okay, we're going to move on to seeking wisdom from the trust tree. Okay, chapter 3. So here he is in his tree and he's having a lot of trouble sleeping. Nibble could not sleep. No matter how much he tossed and turned in the cozy nest of moss and twigs, the weight of his guilt refused to let him rest. The soft rustle of the wind in the trees, usually so comforting, only reminded him of the lie he had told Chipper. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chipper's drooping whiskers and heard his sad voice. This isn't right, Nibble whispered to himself, curling his tail around him. He sat up, peering out of his nest. In the distance, through the gaps in the treetops, he could see the faint glow of the trust tree. Its golden pattern seemed to shimmer even brighter in the moonlight, as if it were calling to him. Nibble's heart thumped as he thought about going to the tree. He had never gone before. What if it could not help him? What if the other animals found out what he had done? He shook his head. No, he said aloud. I have to go. I have to fix this. Quietly, he scurried out of his nest and began, back. Quietly, he scurried out of his nest and began the journey through the trees. The moonlight painted the forest in silvery light, and the air was cool and still. Each step felt heavier than the last one as he neared the great tree. When he finally arrived, the sight took his breath away. The trust tree stood taller than he had ever imagined. Its massive trunk etched with glowing golden patterns that pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. The leaves shimmered with emerald light, and the roots stretched out like welcoming arms. Nibble stood at the base of the tree. Can you see the picture of the big tree? Beautiful tree, hey? His tail twitching nervously. So Nibble stood at the base of the tree, with his tail twitching nervously. Hello, he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The leaves of the tree rustled. Though there was no breeze, a warm, soothing voice seemed to fill the air around him. Welcome, little one, it said gently. Why have you come? Nibble hesitated, his paws trembling. I made a mistake, he admitted, his voice shaking. I ruined Chipper's acorns. I didn't mean to, but then I lied and blamed it on a blue jay. The tree was silent for a moment, and Nibble's heart pounded in stillness. Then the voice returned, calm and understanding. Mistakes are a part of life, little one. What matters is what you do next. Can you see the trust tree taking on the shape of Nibble? Pretty cool, huh? Nibble's ears perked up. But what if Chipper stays mad at me? What if I cannot fix it? The trust tree's golden pattern glowed a little brighter, and its voice softened. Trust is built on honesty. When you tell the truth, you open the door to forgiveness. But hiding behind lies will only make the door harder to find. Nibble sat down at the base of the tree, his tail curled around his paws. I'm scared, he admitted. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid, the tree said. It means doing the right thing, even when it's hard. The tree's golden patterns began to shift, forming the shape of a small bird. It told Nibble a story of a little sparrow who once broke her best friend's favorite branch while playing. The sparrow had been scared to admit what had happened, what she had done. But when she told the truth, her friend forgave her, and together they had fixed the branch. Nibble listened intently, his heart feeling lighter with every word. When the story ended, he stood up, determination shining in his eyes. I'll tell Chipper the truth, he said firmly. Even if he's mad, it's the right thing to do. The tree's leaves rustled again, as if it were smiling. Go with courage, little one. The forest grows stronger with every act of honesty. As Nibble turned to leave, the moonlight seemed brighter, the path ahead clearer. For the first time since the accident, he felt a spark of hope. Okay, so your turn. One more time, guys. Have you ever been nervous to tell the truth? How did it feel afterward when you did? What advice would you ask the trust tree if you could visit? Draw what you think Nibble's journey to the trust tree looked like. What do you think will happen when Nibble tells Chipper the truth? So we're going to leave it here today, okay? And we're going to pick up next time when he goes to have that conversation with Chipper. But I've given you some things to do and some things to think about. And I want you to see what it would feel like if you were in this situation. Would you automatically tell the truth, or would you be afraid to tell the truth to your friend? And would you admit that you weren't honest and to repair a friendship, right? So you have some drawings to do and some things to think about, and I will see you next time on Story Time, and we will read the ending of The Trust Tree. Have a great day, and thank you so much for joining me, boys and girls. Good night.